just want to take a moment to tell a little bit about this program. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is, as I said, it's we can think of it as a result of an interactions between the physical organs in our body as well as our as also all parts of our body. So nature and nurture are really important for almost all aspects of our health. If you think about health issues like high blood pressure or diabetes, they are really the result of a person's genes, but also other factors like stress and diet. So mental health isn't simply a matter of choosing to feel well or trying to have a positive attitude. But on the other hand, like physical health, there are things we can do to proactively take care of our mental health. And the truth is, mental health and physical health overlap in more ways than we might expect. Our brains regulate lots of systems in our bodies, like sleep and digestion. And you might look at this slide and think that some items like dizziness could be a mental health symptom, and similarly, overwhelming stress could absolutely be a physical symptom. And that's kind of the point. Even what we would call purely physical medical conditions like high blood pressure and infections can be influenced by stress and the state of a person's mental health, and vice versa. Mental health is greatly impacted by physical health. For example, physical activity is extremely beneficial for mental as well as physical health. And because of the connection between mental and physical health, everything we do to improve one side of our health can give us benefits for both. That's because mental health lives on a continuum. You see here from health to struggling to being unwell or illness. And the more we pay attention to our feelings and our thoughts, the more we can notice patterns in our life, and we can figure out things like activities and people that strengthen our mental health and which things might cause it to worsen. The good news is that no matter where we find ourselves on this continuum today, there are always things we can do to live healthier. And by improving mental health, it not only helps us feel and function our best right now, but sets us up in positive ways for the long run as well. There are always things we can do to improve our mental health. In other words, Mental health is malleable. It can be influenced for good or for bad. The truth is, though, that nobody feels super all the time. And just because someone looks like they're doing well on the outside doesn't mean they're doing well on the inside. We all need to check in with each other and with ourselves. Our internal experiences, like our perceptions and how we view ourselves, affect not only how we feel, but how we behave, and which in turn can affect what's going on in our lives. But we only see each other from the outside. And while you might not think so, people want you to share your real feelings and thoughts, and the people in your life who care about you want to know the more authentic you. The reality, though, is that we all have times when we don't feel our best. Yet, how can we tell when we or someone else is experiencing changes in mood or anxiety that go beyond normal day-to-day fluctuations? So we need to know the signs. Although everyone experiences mental health in different ways, research has shown that people who might be struggling commonly exhibit one or more observable warning signs, either through what they say or what they do. Signs and symptoms of mental health problems are typically displayed in three ways: through talk, through behavior, or mood. We can use these signs to gain insight into someone's experience and how they might be feeling. So let's look at the signs that mental health might be deteriorating. A person who is struggling might show signs of distress in what they say or how they say it. A person might talk about feeling hopeless, feeling trapped, or being a burden to others. They might even come out and say, "You'd be better off without me around," or "I just wish I could go to sleep and not wake up." Sometimes people joke about feeling suicidal, and it's really important to take that seriously. Some people may be putting it out there in person or on social media to see if you'll notice and feel safer doing it as a joke. We need to learn to always check in. If they're having thoughts of suicide, it's really important to if you're a teen, to let a trusted adult know, or if you are an adult, to help connect them to support. The illustrations in this section, as well as the videos later on, are from the Seize the Awkward campaign. Seize the Awkward is a public service campaign of the Ad Council, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation. It aims to empower young adults to reach out and connect with their friends about mental health, and you can learn more at seizetheawkward.org. Another thing to look out for is a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors, especially if the new or changed behavior is related to a painful event or loss or change. Some common signs someone might be in distress includes that they're harming themselves or doing destructive things to themselves or to objects around them. They might be taking more risks than usual, like in their physical actions, in how they drive, or in substance use. Or they're just not acting like themselves and seem more irritable than usual, like losing their temper more easily than usual. Or the behaviors might show up in subtle ways, like skipping activities they normally enjoy, or just arguing more frequently. A third type of warning signs is mood. You may experience or witness these changes in mood when someone is in distress. Their mind might seem to be somewhere else, or they don't feel like spending any time with others, or they're just simply so anxious they can't relax. These signs may be expressed in someone losing interest in a sport they normally love to play, or by having issues with sleep, including difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or feeling tired all the time. So now that we've covered some of the common warning signs, we're going to talk about how you can start a conversation about mental health, whether you're concerned about a friend or trying to find help for yourself. Before we dive deeper into how you start a conversation about mental health and what you can do if you or someone you know exhibits these warning signs and may need help, let's watch a video featuring singer and songwriter Billie Eilish.
When you think of your mental health journey, what comes to mind?
What a question. I think when people hear remember to take care of your mental health, they think that everyone else is, and that's not at all accurate. For me, I'm trying to learn still to make sure that I stay okay. You know what I'm saying? But I just answered like 40 questions in one.
That's great.
It doesn't make you weak to ask for help. It doesn't. It doesn't make you weak to ask for a friend, to go to a therapist. It shouldn't make you feel weak to ask anyone for help. And you should be able to ask anyone for help. And everyone has to help someone if they need it. starting that conversation, you don't have to make it super serious right away. You say, how are you feeling? Like, are you okay? That's what you say. Are you okay? Ask somebody. That's what they, and yeah, I'm good. Really? Are you actually good? Like, sometimes you don't even have to say anything to someone for them to know they understand. And they don't have to say anything to you. Sometimes it's about a hug. It's about somebody holding you and telling you, not even telling you anything, is what I'm saying. Holding you. The main thing I'm trying to say is that you should keep your ears open and you should listen. And I'm just dealing with it how I'm dealing with it, and I'm trying my best. Obviously, I am not a trained professional in anything. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. But I have seen it, and I've been it, and even if it's just a little bit more comfort, that can really mean a lot to someone, because you don't know what is going on. Even in that moment, there could be something going on, and it's been like that for me. There have been certain people that have texted me right when I needed to be texted, saying they loved me and that they were thinking about me, and it really means a lot. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, you can get more information at seizetheawkward.org.
So she said so many great things, particularly the part where she emphasized that it's always okay to ask for help or even just talk about your mental health with a friend or trusted adult. I also like the part where she talked about her own experiences when someone checked in on her when she was struggling and how their reaching out really helped. So, how can you start a conversation about mental health? If you're worried about a friend, the first step is reaching out. If you're concerned about your own mental health, the same is true. And it's really okay if the words aren't perfect. Reaching out to have a real conversation about mental health, or what we call a real convo, is a great way to take care of your own mental health and support friends who you might be concerned about. It's probably clear by now that starting the conversation is a great step, but it doesn't make it any easier. So on the screen are some examples of how to start a conversation. You could say, hey, we haven't talked in a while. How are you? Or, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself lately. Or, something seems up. Do you want to talk about what's going on? All of these help people connect and start the conversation. If you're feeling at all shy or unsure of what to say, lean in on your friendship and use that connection to give you the confidence to start a conversation. If you aren't close with the person but still notice that they're acting out of the norm or exhibiting warning signs, that's when we tell somebody else that might be more connected to them, or if we're a young adult, a trusted adult like a teacher or counselor. And when starting the conversation, here's a couple of tips to keep in mind. We need to listen without judgment and just simply ask, how can I help? We also avoid giving ultimatums. For example, don't say, if you don't stop hurting yourself, I won't be friends with you anymore. It's not likely to help, and it's not going to make them come reach out to you if they are struggling. We need to listen with the intention to understand, not to fix it. Don't get frustrated if the person doesn't have the same perspective as you about the situation. And it's really important not to shame, blame, or guilt them for their feelings or actions. Instead of accusing them with statements like you, instead use I. For example, don't say you're being irresponsible and reckless. Instead say, I'm concerned that you might hurt yourself because I care about you and it makes me worry. And keep in touch even if you don't get a response. Avoid pressuring them to speak. All you need to do is let them know you care, that you want to hear from them, and that they're not a burden, so that when they are ready to talk, you can be somebody they trust to talk to. And it may take more than one conversation, but your willingness to continue talking and listening and simply being present helps more than you might know. Even just checking in to see how they're doing can be one of the best ways to support somebody struggling with depression, anxiety, or other mental health concerns. Beyond that, we need to reinforce any momentum, no matter how small, that we're taking towards getting help. From the smallest step to a giant leap, all efforts we can affirm. We can say something like, I think it's great that you spoke to someone, and it can make a huge difference. And if you want to do even more, here are a few suggestions. Don't give up. Maybe that first attempt at a conversation didn't go well, or maybe they just weren't ready to talk. Just show your friend that you're there for them. Stay available and keep checking in. And keep the invitations going. You can just remind them that you're there for them to talk when they're ready. And most importantly, handle their trust with care. You may be the only person they talk to about this, so show you care and avoid gossiping about them or turning people against them. As we said, having a conversation about mental health might sound easy on paper, but it can be uncomfortable in real life, and that's okay. The key to having these conversations is just seizing the awkward and going for it. Here's a quick video just as we end this part of the discussion to find out exactly what seizing the awkward means.
Listen, you're my friend.
I noticed you haven't really been yourself recently.
Yeah, I feel like something's up.
How are you?
Are you okay?
Is there anything you want to talk about?
I just want to know how you're feeling.
And listen, even if you don't know what to say, I'm here to talk.
No matter what you're going through,
I just want you to know I'm here.
I've got your back. When you want to talk, I'm here.
Talking about mental health with friends can be scary, and that's why it's important for us to seize those awkward moments so we can remove any embarrassment or stigma someone might have had about mental health and continue to normalize these healthy sorts of conversations. But when thinking about starting a conversation about mental health, especially with our youth doing it, it may bring up some what if questions, like, what if my friend asked me to not tell anyone? Or what if my friend becomes angry with me or stops talking to me? So let's look at a few of those questions and what you can do in those situations. First off, what if my friend asked me not to tell anyone? It's really understandable if your friend asked you to keep their situation private. But when dealing with mental health struggles, it isn't always a good idea. To avoid breaking a promise, it's easier not to make one in the first place. If your friend asked you to promise not to tell anyone, try saying something along the lines of, I understand why you want me to promise not to tell anyone, and I can keep your situation confidential unless there's something that makes me really worried about you. I'm always here for you, and if necessary, can go with you to get support if that's helpful. What if my friend tells me they're being abused or experiencing trauma or having suicidal thoughts? If you're a young adult and your friend is being abused or a victim of trauma or having suicidal thoughts, they need additional help. The best thing you can do as a friend is to assist with getting that additional help, even if it's hard for them to accept. Remember, there are trustworthy adults in your and your friends' lives, and they need to be involved when any serious health or safety concerns are present. As a friend, it's really important you keep checking in on them too. But what if they become angry with me or stop talking to me? Being a confidant is really a part of friendship, and we understand that. However, sometimes being a good friend requires you to break that trust to get your friend long-term help. And this is in connecting them with a trusted adult. We talked before about keeping their honoring their trust by not sharing it with their friends. But this is about keeping their safety. So know you're doing the right thing and take comfort that you played a role in helping them start their road to recovery by reaching out to an adult or helping them connect with an adult so they can get the support they need. And let them know that when they are ready to talk, you will be there to listen. Well, what if my friend rejects my help? Your friend might be scared to ask for help or open up. And if you sense hesitation, you can start the conversation by talking about your own struggles or letting them know you're there for them no matter what, and that you're there to support them. And it doesn't even always have to be the conversation that has you extend a helping hand. We talked before about the fact that people who are struggling often pull back and isolate themselves. So you can help by reaching out to invite them to hang out or come to an event or activity. And if you have a sense that they are needing more or might be more comfortable talking to someone else, you can offer to help make that connection as well. And lastly, what if I start to feel overwhelmed? Helping a friend who's going through something difficult, especially when it involves serious or intense feelings, can be exhausting. It's really important to know your own limits, because if you fall apart, you're not going to be able to help your friend. So take care of yourself. We're going to talk in a little bit about engaging in self-care, and it doesn't mean you're a bad friend. If you need to take a step back, let your friend know that, and make sure that you're keeping yourself okay in order to continue to help and support your friend. Keep your day-to-day consistent, because if you let your friend's mental health dramatically impact or change your own routine or how you interact with your friend, it may negatively impact your friendship and also the support that you can provide them. And be honest about feeling overwhelmed. Recognize when you're feeling like you need to take a step back, and set healthy boundaries. And speak to an adult that you trust if you need. That could be a teacher or a coach or a counselor or your pediatrician or a parent or a faith leader. So now that we talked about how to have a conversation about health, let's go over some resources that can help you take the next step in protecting your and your friend's mental health. If you need extra support, we've mentioned before, you need to reach out to a trusted adult like a parent, school counselor, teacher, primary care physician, adult relative, or coach. Even though you might feel hesitant, know that your concerns are valid and the trusted adults in your life want you to come to them. No concern is too small or not important enough. That is why they're there. And you might feel like you're the only one in your shoes, but every person faces challenges. And there's no reason to feel ashamed, and no problem too big or too small. Most trusted adults too know that it's a sign of maturity and strength to reach out for support and to ask for help and to confront challenges. And they can help you navigate the different resources that might be available at school or in your community, helping you to connect with a mental health professional. And even if you or a friend connect with a mental health provider, it's still important to have a support network around you. That can be family and friends and teachers, because having close people in our lives and staying in touch is part of staying healthy. And before we go to self-care, I want to take a moment to talk about what treatment might look like. Treatment for mental health problems starts with what you're experiencing with a trusted adult. One place you can start is with your pediatrician, who works with psychiatrists and therapists and can help you figure out the best specialist for you or a friend if that's needed. Depression or anxiety disorders are all manageable and can be treated. And that treatment often includes therapy, counseling with a talk therapist, and medication. Sometimes treatment will just include therapy, and sometimes it would include talk therapy and medication. It really depends on what would be most beneficial to the individual. For more severe forms of depression and anxiety or other mental health problems, it's a combination of therapy and medication and self-care, which we're going to talk about next, that's usually the most effective way to restore health. Treatment does not just cover up symptoms. It helps a person get back to feeling better and back to their day-to-day activities. And sometimes treatment is short-term and sometimes it's longer. And all it matters is that it continues to work for you. So before we get to some last resources, one key thing you can do for your mental health is to practice self-care. That's what's about taking actions to increase activities that provide a sense of comfort and well-being for yourself, as well as reducing exposure to things that can leave you feeling depleted, isolated, and not cared for. And on the screen, you'll see there are plenty of simple activities anyone can do to reduce stress, encourage wellness, improve resilience, and restore a sense of well-being. The areas include mind, body, soul, and surroundings. And here are a few examples of self-care activities that can strengthen that resilience. For your mind, it could include making a daily routine or taking breaks or reading a book or journaling. Self-care for your soul might look like connecting with nature or your favorite pet or positive people, or setting boundaries or making sure you follow feel-good accounts on social media that make you laugh or make you feel good. When you take care of your body, it can include things like exercising or stretching or slow breathing exercises. We shouldn't see it as a luxury like manicures and pedicures. It's more like necessary maintenance on a car. These are things we do to keep ourselves healthy. And lastly, our self-care within our surroundings involve making our room comfortable, listening to music, or watching our favorite movie or show. What does self-care look like for you? You can do the things that you know work for you, and don't be afraid to try something new. Before I wrap up, I want to take a moment to talk about some additional mental health resources. A few I'd like to highlight are that if at any point you're concerned about yourself or someone else needing support, you can always reach out to these national resources. Let them know your concerns and get some guidance from them. First, we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK or 8255. You can also text talk to the crisis text line 741-741. And all the resources on this page are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have trained counselors to help you. The second resource is the Trevor Project, the national leading organization providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention resources to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning youth. You can call them at 1-866-48-7386, or you can text START to 678-678. The last resource on this page is the National Sexual Assault Hotline, and it's the largest anti-sexual violence organization. You can see the number on the screen here is 1-800-656-4673, and they also have a chat line. Some additional resources are the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's website, seizetheawkward.org, and a couple of other organizations like NAMI and SAMHSA. In the Capital Region, I also would highly recommend, whether you live in Albany County or not, to download the Albany Hope app, HOPE. It is available both on Android and iPhone. And it is a resource that has all of these resources listed, as well as many of the other things that we discussed today. Questions to ask, a friend to have a conversation, warning signs to look for. It's all on that app, and a great thing just to keep on your phone. Remember, you matter and your mental health matters. Thank you so much for taking the time to join the summit and to listen today. Together, we can create a culture that is smart about mental health and suicide prevention. We'll save lives and vastly improve the lives of many more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. As we know, mental health is vitally important, especially as this past year has been challenging to everybody, especially students going back to school this year. So I hope that provided you with many good resources and good information for you as you navigate this crazy time that we're living in. So now our next guests are nationally recognized public speakers and advocates, JC Good and Steve Johnson. A cell phone distracted driver forever changed JC's life, and now JC and Steve spend their days educating others about the preventable pain happening on our roads every day. They're here to share their incredible story and inspire us all to make safer choices on the road. Please put your phones away, devote your full attention to the presentation, and help me welcome JC Good and Steve Johnson.
Thank you. I want to just take an extended intro here. If someone in the room could tell us if this microphone seems to be. In the meantime, hey, I'm Steve. The pretty one is JC. Here's my water. Yeah, you think this one's working? All right, so then we put the other one in front of the speakers. And that one should pick up the video later. I think we're good. All right, we'll just like pass this mic back and forth. Hello, I'm Steve. The pretty one is JC. We're going to tell you our story today. You know from the intro, from the first slide. Is the slide looking good or is it a little blurry? Looks good. You know that it's going to be about cell phone use while driving, and we're only going to cover that material. But really, we try to keep the focus of our presentations on our personal story. We do that because it's what we think is like the most valuable thing we can give to an audience Crashes happen just all over the place every day. They're so common, but when they do, people get hurt or people lose their lives. And it's not just like some government statistic. It's real lives. It's the people in those crashes and the people that love those people that are really affected by this stuff. So that's just the big overarching message JC and I try to get across to our audiences. We do this like full time. Giving this presentation is our job. We do it all over the country, though we live in New York. Cannot wait to start getting in front of getting in auditoriums again and doing this in person. I think we're close to it. I said that in like July, and then Delta came and kind of screwed up my fall plans for that. But we're close this time. I feel really sure about it. But for now, we're doing it like this. And just like we've had tech issues. We had them today. It's not the first time JC and I have had them. We just got to overcome that stuff, still give a good presentation. We're going to move through it quick. And then if anyone has questions, our info will be up there. You can find us on social media, through email, whatever. That's the intro, babe. Rest of it away.
Thank you, Steve. You are a huge morning for making all of this magic work. My name is JC, and I got to start this story when I was in your shoes, which means going back a couple of years to when I was in high school, actually across state lines. We're going to farm country, Pennsylvania, where, okay, I wasn't like the cool kid in my high school exactly. Oh, gosh.
It just worked.
I think I was cool in high. I was voted most school spirited in my senior class. I knew I wanted to go to college, but my mom was a teacher, my dad was a mechanic. I needed scholarships, so that meant I am voted most school spirited in my senior class. It meant I played softball and volleyball. I ran cross country. I went science fair and church choir and the stage crew and everything I can do so that I can get scholarships and go to college. I graduated number 9 in my class of 300 kids. Gets me into Muhlenberg College. It's this incredible little school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, an hour and a half from where I grew up. But college is intimidating. Like, I'm moving to a new city away from my family for the first time. Starting college classes, making all new friends. It's kind of scary, but I was in this honors program with 15 other people, so at least I had some new friends. One of those friends just happened to be this one really cute boy. We don't know who it is yet. This could be anyone. Okay. His name was Steve.
Maybe we need to move that down that way. There we are, looking cute. 2005. Actually, we probably look more like if you did a Google search right now and typed in like for image search like 2005 college kids, this might actually be the photo that comes up.
Photo.
Yeah.
This is the stock photo that we use. I met Steve the day we moved into our dorm rooms. He lived 4 doors down the hallway. He's in that same honors program. I didn't need to sit alone in the cafeteria. Like, I had a new friend, and that was great until I realized up there, this kid, Steve's never actually had the guts to ask a girl out when he was in high school. Obviously trying to make me his first girlfriend, which I wasn't really interested in, but I don't know. I only lasted 3 weeks before I caved and finally agreed to be his.
I was trying my hardest.
I agreed to be his girlfriend. It didn't matter where we grew up. It didn't matter that he was popular in high school, looked like what I looked like in high school. We had everything in common. We wanted the same things in life. We ended up being together all 4 years of college, so that by the time senior year rolls around, we've been dating for 3.5 years. We've got life together planned. Why isn't it? Oh, there it is.
I know. I think I just need a better line, like a better line of sight on the clicker thing.
This is the senior ball dance the college put on for us. It is one of the most fun nights of all of college. Like, we had taken our finals and the school was just kind of treating us to one last party, I think. It was May 15th. It was, I guess, Steve and I had our lives together planned. Like, he had been hired for a job back home in New York where he grew up. I got hired to work for Habitat for Humanity. I'd live in Brooklyn with my best girlfriend for a year. We'd get engaged and get married and have those kids we had spent the last bunch of years talking about. It's all on my mind just 3 days later. May 18th, 2008 is the day I have been working for my entire life. This is graduation day.
You think I might just wait? Yeah, it just takes like a good. I gotta click everyone like 4 seconds early.
I've been working for this day my entire life, and I graduated with all kinds of honors. My whole family's together. It's this incredible morning. Our parents are having lunch together, planning life moving forward. My family and I packed up our family's car. We left college at 2 o'clock. It's the last time we will make this easy 90-minute drive back home. We got like halfway home. We stopped at this one gas station where we stopped. And there's nothing exciting about this. Like, we'll be home in 40 minutes. But it's a memory that I share with you guys because stopping at that gas station, it's the very last thing that I can remember for almost 2 months.
That one worked. So I had called and texted JC a couple of times each just to let her know situation, from school in Pennsylvania back to my place in New York, it's a 2.5 hour drive. And that was the rule. Just like check in with the other person, let them know you're okay after a long drive. She wasn't responding, but it didn't really worry me. Like JC was never someone who's glued to her place. But on top of that, it's graduation day. Like she could be busy unpacking or celebrating with her family, whatever. But it was those calls and texts from me piling up on her phone. That's the reason I got called first that night. My phone rang. It's like 5:30. Now I look down. It had a picture of her face. It said, JC, babe, her cell phone is calling my cell phone. So I picked up and I was like, hey, babe. But it just wasn't. I reared back to the stranger for about a minute before she finally said, at the Reading Hospital in Pennsylvania, there's been an accident. And she wouldn't tell me anything, like no details, just needed me to answer about Jace. What color are her eyes? How long is her hair? What's her birthday? Her social security number? And, I answer what I can, the best I can, of course. But all of the while in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, JC can't have happened. The call, Barb asked me who she should call next. I said, call JC's brother, Jared. She said she would. And she called me back within 2 hours with an update. And then we hung up. And I just spent that next 2 hours like crying on and off, not knowing what was going on in Pennsylvania or what to do with myself. But 2 hours passed. And then 2.5 hours passed. And I still hadn't gotten that back from the hospital. And to me, in that moment, I was convinced that must mean she was gone. Like they would have called me otherwise. They promised me they would call me within 2 hours. Like this person who I'd been in love with for 3.5 years and who my entire future was based around. She's actually the only girl I ever even kissed. That's it. She was gone. And I was inconsolable, just crying my eyes out. And my family was doing the best they could to try to calm me down. Thankfully, I only had that way for like half an hour. My phone rang again, and it was Jared. It was her brother. And the first thing he said was, JC's alive. He said she's got 2 broken feet, a broken leg, a shattered pelvis, a broken wrist, a broken collarbone, a lacerated liver, partially collapsed lungs, damaged carotid arteries, and some sort of traumatic brain injury. So it's not good. But also said that she was in surgery. And to me, that is going to be okay. Like she's in a hospital, she's with doctors, she's in surgery. People get better after that. That's the way it works. And so I was kind of floating on air. But then the thing Jared said was, unfortunately, neither of my parents made it. And I was right back to where I'd been a minute earlier. These people who treated me like I was one of their own and who I loved so much and who somewhere down the road of life were going to be the greatest grandparents to our kids were just gone. I mean, I like poof, that's it. I was with them that morning. I was planning to see them in just a few weeks, but I'm never going to see them, never going to talk to them, never going to hug them ever again. Just, it wasn't possible. Things like this do not happen in my very normal New York kid life to that point. But I guess the truth is, in that moment, all I could really think about was that girl. So my parents and I packed up, we got on the road like 3.5 hours later. We got to the hospital in Pennsylvania, and they brought us up to this room where we met JC's family. And then all we could do was just pray and wait. She was still in surgery. All the time later, she is still in surgery. So literally all we could do was wait. It was excruciating. Finally, it was really late. It was like 2 a.m. at this point. She had been in surgery for 8.5 hours. Brain surgery says JC's alive. She's out of surgery. You guys can all go see her. Just please do it 2 at a time. So Jared and I, we like kind of linked arms and we supported each other as we walked down this hallway to the last room in the intensive care unit, where this is more or less what we saw. We think this picture is maybe day 4 or 5. We're not really sure, but just because Jared is smiling over her, we don't think it's earlier than that. Some good stuff had to have happened by then, but she looked like death. You would not have thought a person could be alive and look the way that she did. It was just the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. A little bit later on that first night, brain surgeon pulls us off to the side and he says, guys, JC only has about a 10% chance of living through this night. I don't want to like spoil too much of the story for you guys, but turns out he did live through that first night, and a lot of since then, as evidenced by a very alive JC over there. Hi, babe. You're alive. Look, she hit that critical 24-hour point, and then it was and 48, 72. It was these milestones the doctors were saying. If JC hits that next milestone, she'll have an extra 10% chance of surviving long term. No one was talking about like recovery, getting the old JC back to being the old JC. Just would she live through what had happened to her? And she just kept holding on. So blessed the way things went. It was about 2 weeks before she started to wake up a little bit. It was clear right off the bat she couldn't move the left side of her body, but we're just like thrilled to see her awake and doing anything. And she could give us these 5 or 10 minute windows throughout a day where we could be like, hey, Jace, give us a thumbs up. She'd do it, hit or miss sometimes, but she'd do it. And so we knew she was capable of hearing and processing and reacting. And that was awesome. It was so encouraging. But all we could do was pray that it would keep moving in that right direction. And there was nothing even close to a guarantee that that was going to be the way things played out. And this is where I'll sort of fast forward so I can give the story back to JC. But like things were touch and go for 6 or 7 weeks. Like on the surface, time is passing and she's still alive. Isn't she out of the woods? But there was just all these complications, blood clots and infections, like really that was threatening her life for a long time. So that was scary as all heck. But beyond that, getting JC back. Like, yeah, her left side still does not work, but her brain came back to that person I fell in love with. So I don't really care about the left side. I mean, I love the left side. It would be great if it came back, but I don't need it. It's like they did not think it was possible. They call her a miracle in this hospital. I don't think it's a word that medical professionals use lightly. So I just can't stress how amazingly, awesomely incredible it is that 13 and a half years later, like there she is. It's just the best. Anyway, it's about a month after the crash. JC starts to talk. She's not making a lot of sense at first, but over time she makes more and more. And then finally at the 2 month, she's healthy enough, she's stable enough. They can move her from the first hospital to a rehab hospital.
And that is where memories start to come back around. Thankfully,
Questions can be through JC Good's media. It's just at JC Good, or our website has our email address. Thank you guys. Be safe. We love you.
Thank you so much, JC and Steve, for that incredibly important message. Your strength and courage and sharing your empowering story has just been amazing. And I hope that everybody out there will definitely take their message to heart the next time that you get into the car, and know that it is vital that you are not a distracted driver. So our next presenter is our next guest speaker is a peer specialist at the Living Room Crisis Diversion Program. Telly is a young person in recovery for both substance use disorder and mental health, and he's here to share his story with you. Let's give Telly a warm welcome.
You can clip this on.
Hey, should work. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So hello everyone and welcome and thank you for having me. My name is Taylor Robbie. I work at Ellis Pros in Schenectady. I'm one of the clinicians there at the program. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do so. I never imagined at any point in my life that I would ever be saying that I worked in the mental health field, you know, or even be able to say that I am in recovery. So to start my introduction over a little bit, my name is Taylor Robbie, and I am a person in recovery. And I have been in recovery for 6 years for both mental health and substance use disorder. And it's been one of the most interesting and crazy 6 years of my entire life. So a little bit of a background about me. I used to live in this very, very small town in the middle of nowhere in New York called Long Eddy, which is in Sullivan County, New York, which is very much in the middle of nowhere, deep, deep, deep in the country. And growing up in Long Eddy, being Black, being gay, being the new kid to that whole town, it was really, really important for me to try to fit in with the crowd. And so I remember the first day that I went to school and I talked to the kids and I asked them, what do you all do for fun here? The first thing that they told me was, oh, we just kind of party, you know, because that's the only thing that we have to do here. And in that moment, I didn't really think twice about it. I was just kind of like, okay, sure, that makes sense. Why not? Let's go along with it. And that was the start of my drug use. I started off using alcohol and marijuana, and it started being something that I did when I was at parties. And then it transitioned to it being something that I did on the weekends. And very rapidly and very quickly, it transitioned to something that I was doing all day, every day in order to function in my everyday life. And again, where I used to live, that was very much the culture and the norm of the people that I used to hang out with. And in that moment in time, I didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing. I didn't see any harm in what I was doing because it was just so normalized in that space. And as my use progressed, and I was using alcohol and I was using marijuana, my use progressed to starting to use pills and starting to use hallucinogens. And then very rapidly and very quickly, my use progressed to heroin and crack. And I remember the very first time that I used heroin, it felt like I had met the love of my life, basically. And I used to joke with my friends, and I remember this memory very vividly, where I told them this is going to be a lot of trouble. And I said so in such a joking manner, but I didn't realize how much of an impact that using heroin was going to have on my life. It very rapidly and very quickly consumed my entire essence. And it became my reason for being. You know, it provided a service that I was looking for, which was me being able to numb all of the emotions, all of the thoughts, all of the feelings that I had ever experienced that I didn't want to experience anymore. And now being in my recovery 6 years later, I realized that, you know, the drugs became so much of a symptom, right? I engaged in drug use because I didn't have the ability to deal with trauma. I didn't have the ability to deal with my mental health. I didn't have the ability to deal with all this societal pressure that was put on me as a young person. And so the drugs very much filled that void for me. And up until that point in school, when I started using heroin and when I was using crack, I didn't really see the signs or the symptoms to know that it wasn't healthy for me. Because during that time, I was popular in school. I had a lot of friends. I played on sports teams. I got really good grades. I was even working a job at that time. And so I was still engaging in life. And I thought, because I'm still engaging in life, I'm still doing all these things, people still like me, there can't be anything wrong with what I'm doing. All these things that people are saying to me can't be real, they can't be true. And so I continued and I kept going through with that process. Um, and I started using all the way through the end of my high school career. I graduated high school. I ended up going to college. I ended up getting a new job. And I continued in my process of drug use. Um, and so obviously, right, the more that I used, the more my life became dependent on it. So eventually my use got to the point where I ended up dropping out of college because I got fired from my job. I used to work with my best friend. We lived together, we worked together, and our lives were very much interconnected and codependent on each other and our drug use. Um, and it got to the point where every morning when we started work in our bakery at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, the very first thing that we would do is we would open a bag of heroin and we would take a shot of alcohol. And it became so ingrained into my everyday life. Um, and I thought that, okay, I'm continuing to show up to work. I'm still doing really, really well. This can't be an issue for me until it was. And I remember one day I was hanging out with my friend, and we were going just like any other day to go out and to pick up. And on that one day, that was the day that I decided not to fill up my gas tank before I went into work. And so I ended up getting myself stranded on top of this hill. Um, and I left work in the middle of the day to go out and to go and pick up. And when I got back to work on that day, my boss was waiting for me with my firing papers in hand, pretty much telling me, you have to leave, you have to get out, we don't want you here anymore. And even in that moment when I got fired from my job, when I lost my only source of income, my mind wasn't able to make sense of the fact that this isn't working for me. The very first thing on my mind after I got fired from my job was, okay, let me call my drug dealer and let me go and get high. That was the very first thing in the forefront of my mind. And so once I got fired from my job, I decided, well, now I have to drop out of school and I can't go to college anymore because I need to dedicate my entire existence and all of my time to being able to get high. And I had to figure out how to do that any way that I possibly could. So one of the things that ended up happening was I was the person in the town, because if you lived especially where I live, having a car was like the commodity because you couldn't go anywhere if you didn't have a car. And so I became everyone's chauffeur, and people would give me money to go out and drive them around to go and pick up drugs, if they had to go to the grocery store. And that became my new full-time job. And it got to the point where there were like days that went by where I didn't brush my teeth, I didn't shower, I didn't do anything to take care of myself because my entire existence and mindset was focused on being ready and being able to go out and get drugs and use. And even in this moment, even as these things were going on in my life, I still wasn't able to conceptualize and realize what was happening and the impact that it was having on my life. And so for months and months and years, all this time went by and I got deeper and deeper into my drug use. And it wasn't until January 15th of 2015 where my life really started to take a turn. So on January 15th, I was hanging out with this kid who I used to use with most of the time. And we had went, again, going about our regular routine and our regular life. And as we were pulling out of the driveway that we were in from our drug dealer's house, I ended up crashing my car into a fence in this apartment complex. And before I knew it, time went by so slow and so fast, all at the same time. And it was like I looked up and I blinked, and before I knew it, there were 3 cop cars surrounding my car. Um, and obviously, right in that moment, I ended up getting arrested and I ended up going to jail. And as they were handcuffing me and putting me in the back of this cop car, my hand was bleeding all over the back seat of this cop car. Um, and in that moment, the very first thing that I thought about was how pissed off I was that I didn't get to use the drugs that I spent all this time and effort trying to get this whole time. I didn't think about calling my mom to tell her that I'm going to jail and that I got arrested. I didn't think about how that would affect my career or me ever going back to school. My mind was solely focused and enmeshed in my life trying to use drugs. Um, and I remember being in my jail cell and thinking about there would be these moments where I would wake up in the middle of the night, and for like a split second, I would forget about the fact that I was in jail. And then as my eyes came to and it became even more real and I saw the bars around me, everything started to set in. And I realized all of the things in my life that I took for granted, that I wouldn't be able to just go up and get up in the middle of the night and go get whatever I wanted out of the refrigerator, right? I wouldn't be able to watch George Lopez and hear the theme song play in my mind at 3 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't even be able to see my friends or my family or connect with them in the way that I wanted to. And that's when things really started to set in for me. And I knew that I wanted to make a change in my life, but I didn't quite know how. And so, thankfully, with the help of my lawyer, I was able to get bailed out of jail. The very first thing that she told me was that you need to go to rehab, you need to get help, and you need to get your life together. And I heard what she was saying, but I wasn't completely sold yet. I was like, yeah, but maybe, maybe not. Maybe I can still make this work somehow. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to take her advice because I don't want to go back to jail. It was freaking miserable. And so I'm going to do whatever this lady tells me and go through this process. And so I was fortunate enough with the help of my outpatient counselor and my lawyer and my family to get connected to this place in Albany called Hope House. And Hope House was really the true beginning of my recovery journey. Um, One of the things that we used to do when we were in Hope House is they would take us to these meetings, and we got to interact and meet these people who were in recovery. And at first, I was very turned off by the aspect of meetings and recovery because when you first show up to a meeting and you tell everyone that you're new, the first thing that they do is they applaud you and they try to hug you. And I thought that it was the weirdest thing that I had ever experienced in my entire life. And it took me a while to actually warm up to them. And the longer that I spent going to these meetings and engaging with these people, something clicked in my mind. I got to meet these people who were engaging in recovery and who found actual, genuine happiness in their lives. And I realized that for all this time, for up until this point now, the past 20 years of my life, it had been a long time since I had really felt happy and since I had really felt whole. And to see that being displayed from all these other individuals, it started to turn the gears in my life where I really actively wanted to be engaged in my recovery. And so from that point on, I put in all the effort and energy that I could to just be a better me. Um, and in my recovery process, I got to do a lot of really cool things. I got to be a part of a documentary. I got to travel around the country and speak and share experience and my strength and hope with other people. I got to reconnect from my relationship with my family. Um, and I got to find peace within myself, you know, and that was the biggest takeaway and the biggest blessing that I think I've ever gotten from my recovery is that I was able to find peace within myself. Because for a long time, I really didn't like myself. I hated myself, and I thought that who I was as a person wasn't good enough. And the more that I engaged in my recovery, the more I was able to internalize the fact that I am good enough, who I am, and where I am in this moment. And I got to deal with and process a lot of things that I held on to for so long that kept me so stuck in my addictive process. And it was the most freeing thing in the world. And I got to go back to school and I got to graduate and get my degree to become an addiction counselor. I get to work at a program with individuals with mental health and substance use disorders and help them in the same way that I was helped. I get to have my own apartment, which I actually pay my bills on time now, which might not seem like a really big deal, but for me, like that's a really big deal to be able to pay my bills on time and have my own space in my own place. And I get to have these very healthy and meaningful relationships in life. And it's something that I would never, ever take for granted whatsoever. Um, and so throughout my whole process in recovery, I'm very thankful for my therapist because my therapist has dealt with me through all the stuff, all the mess, all the successes, and everything that's incorporated into recovery. And my therapist gave me this very impactful message and metaphor that I use very much now in my process of recovery. And that's that we're all each our own individual garden. And for years and years and years, people have planted these seeds in our garden that have told us that we're not good enough, that we have to be a certain way, that we have to do a certain thing in order to be worthwhile as human beings. Um, and we spent years and years fostering and growing these plants and these seeds in our garden that don't belong to us. And so now in this process of my recovery, I'm actively working on toiling the soil and uprooting those seeds and those plants from my garden that don't belong to me anymore. And I get to plant my own seeds and figure out who I am and who I want to be today in my life. And I never would have been able to have that opportunity without my recovery. And so as my recovery progressed, right, my recovery was very much 12-step based and going to meetings. And as I started to process my trauma and work on my mental health, I was able to grow and evolve in my recovery. And so my recovery now, it looks a lot different now in this present moment than it did when I started 6 years ago. And my recovery now incorporates a harm reduction model. And harm reduction, for some people, right, they hear that and they're like, what the heck is that? What does that even mean? And I was able to find a way in my recovery to be able to use in a healthy and a safe manner. But I realized that I wasn't able to do that until I processed my stuff, until I was able to work on the trauma, until I was able to work on the mental health. I wasn't able to do that until I had abstinence, right? And I was able to clear my mind and work through all of that stuff. And now I'm able to separate myself from the drug use, right? And they don't have to control me or have power over me, right? And I can live my life. And that's not to say, right, use or don't use, right? If you engage in abstinence, that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I give everyone props, right, in the world. And if you engage in harm reduction, if you use too, that's also a wonderful, beautiful thing, right? And so my message and my speech isn't to say use or don't use, but it's to encourage that if you are going to use, it's really important to check our intentions and check our understandings. Because when we're using to help us ourselves stuff emotions, and to deal with trauma and to not deal with reality, we end up engaging in these very toxic and unhealthy cycles. And it wasn't until I was able to see that for myself that I was able to separate myself from the substances. And then the substances didn't define me, right? They became something totally separate and different from who I was. And I'm grateful to be able to stand here now, 6 years later in recovery. Hopefully, I'll come back 6 years later after this and be able to share my story and talk about the wonderful ways that my recovery has evolved. And that's the beautiful thing about recovery, is that no one person gets to define what that means for us. We get to define and make our own recovery and figure out what works for us, because recovery in its essence is just finding a way to live that's healthy, right? And that allows us to find balance. That way we're not causing harm to ourselves and we're not causing harm to others. So if you take nothing else from the speech and from what I'm saying to you, take this time now while you're young to be open and share what's going on with you. Don't be afraid to go to therapy. Don't be afraid to take the medications. Don't be afraid to talk to someone and reach out for help when you're struggling, because there's a whole network and system of recovery out there to help people with anything and everything, basically. So don't be afraid to start, because I wish that when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, that I had someone to talk to me about what recovery looks like and what it means, and allowed me to open myself up to these wonderful horizons that I'm in now. But that's okay, because I got it when I got it, and I'm able to internalize it and experience it in such a beautiful, wonderful, and impactful way. And I'm able to give and receive love in such a meaningful and impactful way. So I hope that you all take this and take even like one little iota from this message and just work on treating yourselves kindly and with compassion and giving yourselves the love that you deserve as human beings. So thank you. Thank you so much for letting me be here with you. I hope that you all have a lovely rest of
Thank you, Taylor, so much for your story. We really appreciate that. As many of us know, the road through substance use starts with prevention, can go then through treatment and then into recovery. And hope is our biggest road to recovery, and we are so glad that he was able to be here and share his story. So now we are on to our final presenters. So our final presenters we're welcoming back Master Sergeant Jess Pajero and Staff Sergeant Eric LeClaire from the New York Air National Guard. Jessica is 38 years old and has been in the military, Army, and Air Force for 21 years, deployed once to the Middle East and a few times to Antarctica and Greenland. Wow, that must be cold. She works as a first sergeant at the 109th, where she takes care of airmen's needs concerning health, morale, and welfare. She's originally from downstate, the Catskills, and now lives in Broad Alvin. She has a master's degree in industrial psychology and enjoys spending time with her 2 kids. Eric is 31 years old and has been in the Air Force for 8 years, deployed twice to the Middle East and a few times to Greenland. He works in Logistics Readiness Squadron at the 109th, where he supports air transportation of C-130s, cargo, and personnel. He's originally from Colony, now lives in Rotterdam. In his free time, he's on a couple different softball teams and just got hired to the Counter Drug Task Force in June. And I heard he's pretty those softball teams, so watch out. Jess and Eric will be discussing awareness and prevention of substance use in communities. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kim.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim. So I told you that we would be back. We want to talk about a project that we recently did for one of our coalitions that we support. And we kind of made it more youth-centered so that we could give this presentation and all the students out there that are watching could kind of understand what you guys can do as far as scanning your community for drug prevention, hotspots, good things, bad things. So we will get into it. We named it Not on My Block. And just to tell you guys what our team does, the purpose of drug demand reduction outreach is to increase the capacity of the community in order to decrease the drug demand in New York State. So that is our mission statement with Counter Drug Task Force. Surrounding drug prevention, law enforcement agencies, and citizens. And we have a focus on the top 5 drugs in New York State, which is prescription drugs. So the purpose of our community scan was to teach the citizens and the youth some hotspots to look for in the community, where you guys can look into places like stores or things like that. We'll get into where we went to figure out skills and things on how to deter drug use and distribution in that area. We also provide situational awareness and observation skills to the community through these scans. And we want to help you and help our communities foster a healthy environment in order to provide outlets for healthy recreation and also offer resources for rehabilitation and prevention. So I will have Eric get into where we went and some things that we saw.
Very good. Thank you. I'll do the clicker. So hi, welcome. Thanks for attending the Youth Summit. So the spots in the community that were brought to our attention from the coalition that we dealt with, they determined that they were spots that may have high drug use or drug sales and whatnot. So what we did, we went to a couple of them. Well, we went to all of them, and we looked for things that would make it easy to sell or use drugs in that area. We also looked for evidence such as paraphernalia, beer cans. We walked around the business. We really just did a full 360 on it to see what activity is actually going on. So now I know this isn't necessarily your community, but I'm sure in your community, there's spots like this so you can look at some of the different signs we looked at. This particular spot is a gas station. It's a Sunoco. It's in Averill Park, New York. The interesting part about this particular location is it's directly across from a high school. So obviously the accessibility factor is there for students like yourselves to be able to, right after school, go to something like this. What we found, positive things. So now not everything has to be bad drug use and paraphernalia, some things can be good for your community that allow resources for you to talk to or communicate with, such as a sign here that says, win a free ride in a police car just by shoplifting from this store. So right off the bat, you probably know it's not a store you want to mess around on. They're taking care of their area. Please leave all your backpacks at the door, and right behind it was a community care. So those are some positives of the area that could help deter crime at that location. Some of the negatives, as we discussed in high school, we witnessed some people not being ID'd. So Sergeant Badro and I, there's a deli inside of it. We had a sandwich, and we watched kids that could have been underage buying glass pipes, flavored tobacco. It was just an easy store to be able to get things that could allow marijuana use or worse. Sells glass pipes and flavored vapes. And then also a sign right here, coming soon, wine and liquor outlet. So in the same parking lot it's probably built as a liquor store. So attract a certain type of person. You have, people outside smoking cigarettes, and you have all these kids after school who go walking by the location, and they're maybe influenced. They can see, what's going on. So ultimately, it's not good. And that's something that if you have one of those in your community, you may want to bring that up to somebody that you trust, or, law enforcement, and say, hey, this just doesn't seem right. Moving on. Another location, it was a Hannaford. So depending on your location of where you are, you might have grocery stores, might not be a Hannaford. The thing about this location is parking lots. And if you want to blend in and you don't want to be isolated or seen doing something, being in a parking lot can be easy because there's 100 cars in there. No one knows if you're smoking pot, if you're doing drugs, shooting up, drinking a beer can. Some of the negatives of this location, there was a lot of dark alleys on the side. So if you have businesses in your area that you notice, hey, there's a light out and it looks like that's a sketchy alley, I don't want to be over there, bring it up to somebody. Maybe a local coalition or the business owner would be able to replace that light, therefore deterring any criminal activity in the alley. One of the positives of it is it's right next to a fire department. So I don't know about you guys, but if I see a fire department, I see law enforcement, I see ambulances, that's all good stuff. That's stuff that's going to deter any criminal activity in the area. What we did find, the alley was filled with trash, which shows that people are in the area. They're throwing garbage over there, doing whatever it is they're doing. We found a crack pipe. I've actually never seen drug paraphernalia in person like that before, but obviously someone's back there doing things they shouldn't be doing. So as discussed, some of the solutions could be very simple. Repair the light. That way people can't be back there not seen. They're going to stick out, right? Repair the light. You could have the alley cleaned. One thing that we discussed with our sheriff's department was a thing called geofencing. So at night, when these police officers don't have many calls, they can geofence a location so that the sheriff or the police chief can track where the police officer is, or how many times they broke that geofence. So rather than waiting at a different location that doesn't have any drug issues, you could geofence areas where there is criminal activity or drug use, therefore offering a deterrent to people using drugs. So right back, with the light and the trash, it's a big thing because if you have a light there, people aren't doing things they shouldn't be doing, and they're not throwing trash in the ground. Trash doesn't attract bad activity, so keep areas clean. I think that's just a huge thing that you can do to keep the badness out of certain locations. Another location, there was a Jiffy Mart. So something like this, I don't know if you can notice on the top right corner, it's on a triangle of a road. So you have two roads that come to it. So that's accessibility. Right? It's not on a one-way road. One road, there's two lanes that come together. Ultimately, there were positive things that we like to see here. Rensselaer County drug tip line. So they have that right in the front. Very easy for somebody that sees somebody using drugs or selling drugs to say, you know what? I don't like that. I want to do something, because it starts with you and I. There's the phone number, right to the sheriff, drug tip line. Smile, you are being videotaped. So once again, you know that you're being watched. And then another thing that a lot of business owners could do, which I thought was amazing, and I've only seen it at this location. Everybody knows when you walk into a gas station or, a gas station, and there's all the glass doors for beverages. You have those 2 or 3 doors at the end that sell all the beer, all the tall boys, all the 40 ounces and whatnot. All those doors at the gas station had a sign that says, "Attention customers, if you are going to think about buying this alcohol today, regardless of your age, you're going to be ID'd." So I thought that's pretty cool, because a lot of these kids that think that they can get away, oh, I got a mustache or I got a beard and I'm 18, 19, I can buy beer today. That's going to tell me, hey, I'm not going to buy beer here, because that guy's going to ID me. I'm not even going to try it. I'm going to go somewhere else. So as much as we want to talk about prevention, deterring can be just as good, I think, because you're going to say, not on my block, not in my neighborhood. I don't want this stuff going on where I live. I want a healthy environment. So if you have a store and you want to see that done, maybe you can print the signs out yourself. Maybe you can say, hey, do you mind sticking these in the glass for me? That's a great idea. And there was a clothing drop box in the back. It's nice. That means you have people that care to give back to the community frequenting that area. Do you have something you want to say? Okay. I know a lot of these are gas stations, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but the gas stations are convenient just for the accessibility factor of it. This particular Cumberland Farms was on a bus route, and the fact that it's on a bus route means that people can hop on, hop off, they can come from different areas, they can come to your community from theirs and do their dirty business, because nobody ultimately wants to do things in their own backyard. They want to go somewhere else away. You want to keep the badness at bay. So this gave a big positive for accessibility. For this particular location as well, we were able to get calls for service from the local police department, just how many times bad guys were coming here and using, because everyone have an opinion and say, I don't think I like this spot. Okay, well, why? You got to back it up with facts. So in this spot, verify there were 4 calls for service between April 2020 and August 2021. And there was 2 calls this past August that occurred within just 91 minutes of each other. And these aren't calls for a fight in progress. These aren't calls for in the room with a needle. You know what I mean? So happening in your community, and we want 3 out of the 4 were drug related, and 2 of the 3 were overdoses, and the users would utilize the bathroom to do their business. So in the whole scan that we did, one thing that we always looked at when we went into a location, how clean's the bathroom? I don't know if anybody's heard of the broken window theory, but I mean, it starts with something really small that can develop into a big problem. So if you keep your bathroom pretty clean, that means you probably keep your area pretty clean. And if you keep your area clean, you're going to have an eye on bad guys in your location. So keep that in mind. If you see a dirty bathroom somewhere, maybe bring up someone's attention and say, hey, can we get this bathroom cleaned up? Because bathrooms are a big spot where we see a lot of drug use, and you might see it in your community as well. Another location that was given to us, we're not going to do a whole bunch more. We're almost done. But Butler Park. So this is a park that's right next to the high school as well. We didn't see any immediate criminal activity, but I just wanted to highlight a couple good things that went on. So if you see this in your community as well, you can make sure that sticks around. Sign that says no loitering, young lungs at play, tobacco free. So that tells me that somebody cared enough to hang the signs, no loitering, saying that, hey, if you're just hanging out around here and a police officer drives by, you're probably going to get stopped and asked, hey, what are you doing? The sign says no loitering. So it's good to have that there. It was a pavilion, had some security cameras in use. It had hours, so Sand Lake, Butler Park, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. There, park past 10 p.m. It's taking away spots where criminal activity can occur. But other than that, we didn't see a lot of activity there, but just some good positive influences. So this is actually across the street from one of the Cumberland farms. This is it's a park and ride. So for some of the children that may not know what a park and ride is, if you want to take a city transportation to your work and it's on a bus route, you can drive your vehicle to this parking lot, leave it, get on a bus, and then go to work. But what the parking lot does is like accessibility. It allows people to sell drugs in this parking lot and get back on a bus before the cops can get there. There was a lot of calls for service for this location, but by the time people got to the parking lot, perpetrator was gone, bad guy's gone. He gets on the next bus and leaves. Once again, going from their community to your community and bringing the problem with them. So ease of access for criminal activity, and there's little to no oversight. So if you see something like this in your community and you don't want it to be, be a bad spot, petition to have some cameras put in, petition to have the geofencing for the sheriff's department. If the cops have nowhere to sit at 2 a.m. in the morning, well, go sit here if there's criminal activity. These are things that you can just discuss with your local law enforcement agencies. Sorry, Badro?
All right. Thank you, Eric. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit about what you can do in your communities. Like it says up there, community policing begins with you and I. Positive influences do go a long way. So even if you think it's just something like talking to the store clerk about a dirty bathroom, like he said, the broken window theory, it does go a long way, and it can definitely encourage more positive influences.
Can I just say one quick thing about that too? So the broken window theory, I mean, it's something that I've read about, and I don't know how much I really discussed it, but just to break it down real easy, if you have a building in your community and there's a broken window in it, Okay, well, broken window. If it doesn't get fixed, it's an eyesore, right? And if there's an eyesore, someone might say, well, I got to throw my piece of trash out today. That window's broken. So then now they're littering on your front yard. And before you know it, the house has garbage and it's vacant because now nobody wants to live there. And now you have a house that's vacant for maybe homeless people or drug users or people to get inside the building. And now the neighbors don't want to live there because they're next to a vacant building with drug use. So now they go out. And before you know it, your whole community can be negatively impacted from a broken window. So that's the theory on the broken window theory. So if you see something small, fix it before it becomes a bigger issue.
So that's pretty much it. We just wanted to make sure that you guys, when you're going throughout your community, look around, look to see what you can do, how you can help. Remember that it starts with all of us, and don't let it happen on your block.
Not on my block. Thank you. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jess and Eric. Really appreciate your candor and your help in our communities. Again, not on your block. This is where prevention starts. It starts with you. And this is how we make our communities happier, healthier, and safer. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our 3rd annual Youth Summit for the National, sorry, for NECAP. Thank you for tuning into our 3rd annual Youth Summit for NECAP. Again, we will be having our 4th annual Youth Summit on March 16th of 2022 at the Albany Cap Center. We look forward to seeing everybody there. No, you are not alone in figuring these different situations out as far as distracted driving and substance use prevention. You have a community around you, and you can make the best choices for you and your community. So anyways, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in March.